So literally within the last half an hour, Brian Daboll has been announced as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And I, in making this video, was also making another video about Matt Eberflus going to the Chicago Bears. I think Matt Eberflus will prove to be the best head coaching hire of 2022, and not very far behind him will be Brian Daboll at the end of the year. I think Brian Daboll has a better chance than almost any head coach going into next year to probably win head coach of the year for the next 2023 season. And now there's a lot of factors to this. One, it's going to be kind of easier for Brian Daboll to integrate himself into this New York market than any other head coach would have been going into this market. Mostly because of the fact that he pretty much was the only guy in the actual New York market last year. You got to remember, the Giants and the Jets both play in New Jersey. The Buffalo Bills are the only team that play in New York. So he's used to actually being in New York and having kind of a target on his back with that New York media. Now, there's other factors to this. A, him and the GM, the new GM, Joe Schoen or Schoen, I forget exactly how to say his name, they want to make Daniel Jones a good quarterback in the NFL. And that is going to be a tough task because if you are looking at what has happened in Daniel Jones' career so far, Brian Daboll, whether he is the offensive coordinator or not, Brian Daboll is going to be the third head coach that Daniel Jones has had in 4 years. And if he's the offensive coordinator or if someone else is the offensive coordinator, that's going to mark the fourth offensive coordinator that Daniel Jones has had in his 4 years. Another thing is that Brian Daboll and the new general manager for the New York Giants, as well as the ownership in John Mara and the rest of that New York Giants franchise, want to see Daniel Jones succeed in a New York Giants uniform. That has been well stated over the past week and a half with not only the hiring of Brian Daboll today, but the hiring of Joe Schoen in the last week and John Mara coming out and basically saying that he, as well as the rest of the franchise, have done everything possible to ruin Daniel Jones, and it still kind of hasn't worked. Daniel Jones has still shown flashes of being a more than serviceable option at that starting quarterback position for the New York Giants. There's a couple interesting things to kind of ponder with Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones. One is, could Brian Daboll even make Daniel Jones good? Like I said, there already has been a track record with Daniel Jones. He hasn't been able to make it work with multiple offensive coordinators and head coaches. Maybe the issue is Daniel Jones. However, if the issue is not Daniel Jones, is Brian Daboll really the guy to turn Daniel Jones into a good quarterback? Well, he does have the record of turning Josh Allen into a really lowly looked upon prospect coming out of Wyoming into the one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the NFL today. Now, is Daniel Jones going to be Josh Allen 2.0? Probably not. There's no real way to just replicate what Josh Allen does on a game-by-game basis for the Buffalo Bills and their franchise. However, what you can say is Daniel Jones does do some of the things well that Josh Allen also does well. Daniel Jones has a decent enough arm. Daniel Jones, like Josh Allen was early in his career, a little bit inaccurate, but that can be fixed like we saw with Josh Allen. Daniel Jones is every bit as athletic as Josh Allen is. I know a lot of people aren't going to be able to admit that because nobody watches New York Giants games, which I don't blame you. But with that being said, Daniel Jones, I think, ran a faster 40 time. I think has a higher vertical jump. He's as athletic as Josh Allen is. Make no mistake about that. And if Brian Daboll is unable to unlock that potential with Daniel Jones like he was able to unlock with Josh Allen, then there's no reason to believe that Josh Allen, or Daniel Jones actually, will become one of, if not, I won't say the best quarterback in the NFL, but he has a chance under Brian Daboll to unlock a new gear and become a great quarterback in this league. Now, is hiring Brian Daboll enough to just say that the Buffalo Bills, what? Is hiring Brian Daboll enough to say that the New York Giants are just going to win the Super Bowl within the next 2 to 3 seasons? No, there is an obvious issue with Saquon Barkley. There's an issue with the skill group at the wide receiver and tight end spot. There's an obvious issue with the offensive line, and there's issues all over the defense. With that being said, the New York Giants have not been at this rock bottom point in a long time. They just fired Joe Judge a couple weeks ago. They are coming off a season that they won 4 games out of 17 which I think is their lowest winning percentage in about 4 or 5 seasons. They just don't look good right now. Nobody really wanted to go to this New York Giants situation. However, their best possible candidate that could have came there ended up going there. And I really think a lot of people are going to be kicking themselves for not hiring Brian Daboll earlier, because even though I do think he was the perfect candidate, not only for the New York Giants, I think he would have been the perfect candidate for a lot of NFL teams. Mostly because of the fact that, he's seen what can work against the Kansas City Chiefs of the world. He's seen what can work against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the world, against the New England Patriots of the world. Against teams who are actually ingrained in success, he's seen what his system can actually do against a variety of other NFL teams who are elite defensively and elite in terms of a franchise standpoint. What he is bringing to the New York Giants cannot be understated. And if he is able to turn Daniel Jones into an elite quarterback, the New York Giants are going to be competing for Super Bowls within the next 4 to 5 seasons.